of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this great and wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we have faced for the past several decades. And we talk about not only the damage that it has done to our society, to our culture, but also what we can do to turn things around. As those of you who have tuned in before already know, the reason the piece that plays at the beginning and end of this program that sounds very much and is intended to be like a patriotic piece. It is a patriotic piece, and I'll have more to say about that later on, but America, My Home was inspired when I was actually writing a book on the greatness of our country. And the fact is that our freedoms have always depended upon the character of our people. I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. But we've lost sight of that. We've lost sight of how crucial character is to the maintenance of our freedoms. We've become deluded thinking that laws and rules and regulations will keep us safe. But the country was not founded on those principles. Our country was founded on the principle that if good people, decent, God-fearing folks with character, if they're left alone, if government stays out of their way, if they have the maximum freedom to be all that they can be, that they will prosper and they will create opportunities not just for themselves but for their neighbors. And they'll take care of one another. And they'll build great societies, societies founded on bedrock institutions. It's all predicated on that. And the founders knew it too, by the way. They said that everything that they were setting up, structure-wise, for our government wouldn't work if people weren't of decent character, and that they needed to adhere to their basic convictions based in primarily their religious beliefs, if this whole experiment in freedom was going to work. And sadly, what we've been witnessing in our age of moral relativism is we've been witnessing an erosion of individual character, and as a result, an erosion of the institutions in our culture that have always fostered character development. And it's a vicious circle, a negative vicious circle with sliding values, principles, eroding institutions, leading to individuals not developing the character they need to get through life. And then in turn, so many people of such underdeveloped character creating a cultural atmosphere that degrades and further erodes those institutions that once made us great. So it's a vicious circle. Both feed the other in this vicious circle. And as a result, what we have is a society where there's no more sense of right and wrong. There's particularly no more sense of shame for doing the unthinkable. And every day we pick up the paper and we see another example of it, and we wonder why things are going the way they are. And unfortunately, mental health professionals, of which I am one, have for the past many, many years been asked to deal with this problem, and we're ill-equipped to do it. Most of us are ill-equipped to do it. Why? Because the things that we were taught to help people overcome their fears and anxieties and the scars of their childhood development, these things are of little use in dealing with folks whose character is significantly flawed. The folks who, instead of being overly hung up, are not hung up enough. The folks who, instead of being riddled with unwarranted shame and guilt, are not shameful or guilty enough about the things they've let themselves do. So we have a whole different ball game here. Instead of treating people who are suffering from low self-esteem and from fears and insecurities, many times we professionals are asked to intervene with folks who think far too much of themselves, who have no compunction about what they might consider doing to somebody else to satisfy their own selfish wants or needs. And as a result, we're suffering as a society. Everyone is suffering. And these days in schools, where teachers are on the front lines of the character crisis many times, there are so many children present in schools in so many areas of the country in certain pockets who are totally unprepared in so many ways to learn. They come from backgrounds in which there are no values and standards upheld, and what values and standards are promoted are not the kind that we would really want most people to adopt. They're dysfunctional. And so therefore, these young people come to the table unprepared to learn what they need to do, not just academically, but about life in general. So it's a terrible vicious cycle that's gone on for too long now, and we really have to turn the tide. So toward that end, I've been working for the last 25 plus years to bring a message out there, to get my message out about the importance of character. And in that regard, I have the good fortune to have written some best-selling books. First, my international bestseller, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, perhaps regarded by many as the definitive book on manipulation. Enjoying a nearly 18-year run in print, and in September, about to embark on its 19th year, an unprecedented, an unprecedented longevity as a bestseller to any book out there. I'm very deeply grateful for that. I think the biggest reason for that is the fact that the problem is perennial. This is a problem that doesn't go away. There are just too many ways for folks to manipulate, and there are too many manipulators out there of one type or another. So because of that epidemic and because folks find themselves in manipulative relationships, I think that's the biggest reason why, even after all these years, the book continues to be a bestseller, and why it's been translated into so many, as many as 18, no, I'm sorry, I misspoke, as many as 14 foreign languages right now. And we're working on a 15th. I'll have an announcement about that, I hope, in the next month or so. And then my other book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age. These are the two ways that I get my message out there. And then also this program, this weekly program, which I invite you to call in and join the discussion on at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296 if you want to join the conversation. And also my blogs, my own personal blog at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com, where I have an article every single week. Just wrapped up a series on cognitive behavioral therapy, a primer on the topic, and how properly done cognitive behavioral therapy can really make a difference in a person's life, especially a person who's been in a relationship or who is in a relationship with a character disturbed or character disordered individual. So if you've got a character impaired person in your life, you'll definitely want to look at the series at manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. And read the series on cognitive behavioral therapy and its mechanics. It's a good series, 4 articles long. You should find every one of them really helpful. And then I also write for another blog, Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life at www.counselingresource.com. That's counseling with 2 L's, counselingresource.com. I have an article a week on that site as well. Timely articles that supplement very nicely the articles that I write for the Manipulative People blog. And then my third book for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome, is my latest publication. Came out in 2011. And I'm pleased to say it's also a bestseller. You can get it at Amazon or your local bookstore or your local Christian bookstore. If they don't have it on the shelves, please order it. Tell them to keep it on the shelves. That's the first book I've written for the Christian faith community. It hopefully won't be my last, but I've had a great deal of difficulty putting new written material together. That's another story, perhaps, for another program. So I appreciate all the support for my 3 books. And I want to talk tonight, too, about America, My Home, just a little bit. The song that you hear at the beginning and at the close of this program, as I mentioned, the reason I played the song as the opening and closing bumper is because I was inspired to write it, to compose the music for it, and my wife and I collaborated on the lyrics. I was inspired because of the growing realization that I had about the interdependence between freedom and character. about knowing full well that in our country, freedom is totally dependent upon character, and our greatness is even more so dependent. When we're good people, when we're good, solid people, and we don't need the rules to guide us, but we take advantage of our freedoms to do well for ourselves and well for our communities, and we stay true to our values, and we respect our best institutions, and we honor our best ideals. When we do those kinds of things, we build a great, great society, a second-to-none society. And not too long ago, we had perhaps what Tom Brokaw rightly calls our greatest generation. At least one of our greatest generations, if not the greatest. There have been many different times in our history. Times when we weren't so noble. Times when we had every reason to be ashamed of ourselves. But we've had some very shining times, too. Some shining moments. Eras where we've stepped up to the plate and been all we could be in character, individually and as a people. And as a result, we prospered. We prospered like no place on earth. Not only did we prosper, but we brought almost everyone along for the ride. Why didn't we need some kind of oppressive totalitarian regime to forcibly spread the wealth? Why? Because we weren't such selfish, such unprincipled, such entitled folks. We were dedicated not just to ourselves, but to our communities, to upholding certain principles. And that's what made it all work. And we need to return to that, because if we don't, we're going to face an ever-increasing temptation for government to micromanage our lives and therefore restrict our freedom. That's what happens. And so this is the time of the year as we approach some of the patriotic holidays that I start getting requests. People go to the internet and they start researching patriotic songs and they look for new music. And if they start Googling or they start searching YouTube and type in keywords like Patriotic Songs America or Great Patriotic Songs or New Patriotic Songs, then many times video performances of videos of performances, public performances of America My Home come up, and people can hear for themselves the capacity of this song to stir emotions and to get people thinking about what really made our country great. And then I start getting requests from folks for performance rights for various venues. The piece was written as a performance piece. It was meant as a kind of a rallying cry for folks to step up and be all that they could be and honor our best ideals so that we can keep freedom alive. And I couldn't be happier about that. And I want to thank the folks who have written in. I have some more emails from yesterday that I haven't yet gotten to from folks. I promise you folks, by tomorrow morning I'll have them all answered for your requests for America My Home. So hang in there if you happen to be listening tonight and you're one of those folks who sent in a request for sheet music or for the performance tracks. I will get back with you and we'll get you hooked up, as they say, with what you need for a performance of America My Home, and you can help carry the message that freedom and character, they're intertwined, inextricably intertwined, and we all need to do our part to honor the best ideals of our country so that we can guarantee the survival of freedom, not just for ourselves, but for our children and our children's children. It's a precious commodity, and we don't want to lose it. And we're really running the risk these days because of our character crisis. So let's all do our part. And if you want to visit YouTube, on my channel on YouTube at Dr. George K. Simon, you can see several videos, several performances, hundreds of thousands of views on these altogether. You'll find one, I'm sure, that you like. So visit either YouTube or Google America My Home or Anthem for the Millennium, which is its official title, and take a listen for yourself, see if it doesn't inspire you. And if you want to be one of the ones, or you want to suggest to someone at your church or your civic organization that this is just the piece to help inspire your group, VFW or American Legion or whether you belong to any other kind of civic organization, or just maybe your community is coordinating a patriotic event, maybe a Memorial Day event, maybe a 4th of July event, maybe your school or your church is doing that, and you think the piece is just right for that, go and listen for yourself, and there's information on the videos. There's also information on my website at drgeorgesimon.com. That's drgeorgesimon.com, and also on my manipulative-people.com website. You can find all the information you need about America My Home. Well, once again, if you want to call into the program tonight, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. It's kind of an open mic night again. I should tell you that in 2 weeks, it will not be a live program. I haven't yet let the producer know about that. I just found out recently that more than likely 2 weeks from tonight, I will be away and will not have good enough access to the internet to be able to do the program live. So you'll be treated to one of the best of or one of the pre-recorded programs. And so you won't be able to call in. So if you have a question you want to ask, if you have a situation you want to share, something you think the audience will find interesting, just a comment you want to make about anything that we talk about on this program, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I want to talk just a little bit about the wrap-up of the series that I've been doing on manipulative-people.com. Been explaining what cognitive behavioral therapy is all about and why it is the treatment of choice for individuals with character issues, and why traditional modes of psychotherapy, insight-oriented psychotherapy, are just not appropriate. You know, when I wrote both In Sheep's Clothing and The Character Disturbance, I was careful to compare and contrast the differences, the very stark differences between individuals who are best described to some degree as neurotic. These are individuals who are struggling with hang-ups, with fears and insecurities that disadvantage them and make their own lives miserable. They tend to be worriers, fretters, insecure, anxious folks who don't really understand what's troubling them and why they are so miserable. And what they really need is to uncover the unconscious roots of their misery and to gain some strength and gain some insight, in particular, into their unconscious conflicts. And by golly, after doing that, they feel energized and refreshed and empowered. But unfortunately, the therapies, the wonderful therapies that we have, especially insight-oriented psychotherapy, the wonderful therapies that we have for dealing with folks who are riddled with fears and insecurities, the more neurotic folks, are just inappropriate and ineffective generally when it comes to folks with disturbed or disordered character. And so in my books, In Sheep's Clothing and in Character Disturbance, I make the point that on just about every single dimension of human functioning that you can think of, individuals who are character impaired are different from folks who we affectionately refer to as neurotic. For example, I'll just give you a few of the differences. Individuals who are neurotic have an overactive conscience. They are basically their own worst enemies because they are so overly conscientious. They fret too much. They have a huge sense of guilt and a huge sense of shame. And they never want to do anything wrong, and they never want to do anything that's going to make them look bad in the public's eye. They really want to they want to be seen as good, and they want to do good. And they fault themselves ever so quickly for the littlest errors. So on this dimension of conscience, neurotic folks are very conscientious. Contrasting are the character-impaired individuals who are grossly lacking in conscience. Their conscience development has been impaired for some time, ever since they were young. They didn't form solid consciences. And as a result, they also don't have a big sense of guilt when they do things wrong. You know, guilt is that thing that kind of makes you hesitate and stop for a minute and think about things when you're thinking about doing something wrong. And they also don't have a big sense of shame. As a matter of fact, the more seriously character impaired the individual is, the more shameless they are. Shameless, utterly shameless. And, you know, you don't have to look very hard, especially in the public world, especially in the world of politics, where these power-grubbing individuals are so totally shameless in their behavior. It's all about them, and it's all about their aggrandizement, and it's all about the power, and it's all about the money. And they do this shamelessly. And sometimes they get caught. Sometimes they get caught, doing things that reveal just how impaired their character is. And they treat it like nothing. They slough it right off. They laugh. It rolls off them like nothing because they have no conscience, no sense of guilt, no sense of shame. They're shameless. So that's just another dimension on which conscientious neurotic folks and unconscientious character disturbed folks contrast so differently. They are just so different. So I've mentioned two things now. Another thing that makes them so different, makes neurotic folks and character impaired folks so different, another dimension of human functioning, is what generally prompts them to seek any help. Neurotic folks cause themselves a lot of pain. Individuals who have a conscience, who have a heart, but are struggling with fears and insecurities, and who are struggling with unconscious conflicts, they're hurting. They're hurting. They're in pain, and they seek help. They want to be better. They want to feel better, and they want to be better. So they will knock on a therapist's door very readily, or they'll let somebody know that they need help. They'll talk to their pastoral counselor. They'll seek out some other kind of counseling. Or they'll seek a professional therapist of some type. Because they want to feel better and they want to be better. Contrast that with the character-impaired individual who is usually dragged into the therapy process, kicking and screaming. Dragged in by the ear. Don't want to go. And not only that, they're not in pain. Folks around them are in pain, and generally speaking, because of their behavior. There's an old saying, I've repeated this before, I've said this before, I'll repeat it many times again, I'm sure, but there's an old saying in our business that if somebody is making themselves sick, they're probably to some degree neurotic, and if they're making everybody else crazy, they're probably to some degree character impaired. And there's a lot of truth to that. So that's just another dimension on which neurotic and character disordered folks or character disturbed or impaired folks differ. Another thing is what they need in therapy. Yeah, as I mentioned before, neurotics have a lot of unconscious conflicts going on. They have a lot of things, a lot of hang-ups that they are not consciously aware of. And so what they really need, and this is why these therapies were developed, is they need to get some insight into the underlying conflicts, the underlying emotions and unresolved issues that are fueling their discontent. So insight is truly what they need. It's rarely enough, but that's another program. And I've actually written a series of articles on my Manipulative-People blog on that, and on the Counseling Resource blog, too. Why insight is never enough, but it's still very valuable, and it's an important first step, and it's what neurotic individuals need. Contrast that with character-impaired individuals who already know what they're doing and why they're doing it, even though it's driving everybody else crazy. It's not insight that they need. Besides, they've heard probably 100,000 times from different folks just what it is they do that makes everybody else crazy. So it's not like they're unaware. And it's not like they're unaware of what motivates them either. So insight-oriented therapy is pretty much useless because that's not what they need. What they need is correction. What they need is correction of their behavior, correction of the thinking, the stinking thinking that often accompanies that behavior and predisposes that behavior. It's the unhealthy attitudes that they hold and the way they tend to look at the world and the way they tend to think about their relationships and the way they tend to think about other people and their relationship to other people that causes all the problems. So they need to change the way they think and the way they act. Correction is what they need. And that's where CBT, that's why I wrote these series of articles, this series on cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy was designed as a supplement to behavior therapy Behavior therapy targeting specifically behaviors of concerns, the behaviors that character-impaired people do that drive everybody else nuts. You know, like acting impulsively, like doing, like exploiting people, like taking advantage of people, like never accepting, like never being accountable, for their behavior. These kinds of things drive people crazy. Lying, incessant lying, in all the many, many ways there are to lie. I've gotten many emails from folks who've read the articles that I've written on that topic too, and the pages that I devote in both my books, In Sheep's Clothing and Character Disturbance, on the many, many, many ways to lie that there are that character-impaired folks use. Careful word parsing. I mentioned last week, a bit off topic for a minute, but I mentioned last week the article that I read in the paper about the FBI's Elite Hair Analysis Unit. And our spokesman for that unit was carefully parsing words about the flawed, get this, the quote, flawed testimony. Flawed. The agents gave flawed testimony and, quote, overstated, end quote, certain results. In many trials that resulted in convictions, and in some cases, the death penalty and death for certain individuals who turned out to be not guilty. But the careful word parsing that character-impaired people do is just another one of the hundreds of ways that crafty characters have learned to lie. In other words, it's a lie. What these agents were saying on the stand, they were lying. They wanted to do some favors. They wanted to look good. They wanted to help prosecutors get their convictions, even if it meant lying, which they did. They didn't give flawed testimony. They gave false testimony. They didn't overstate their results. They gave false results. They didn't just make a mistake. They lied and people died. And that, my friends, is just another testament to what I have been saying all along about the importance of character to our society. No law, no rule, no regulation can protect us from that kind of thing. In the aftermath of this announcement from the FBI's elite unit, they're going to be looking at policies and procedures and making changes. Like the policies and procedures they had weren't good enough. Like the policies and procedures that they had already and do have in place somehow advocate people lying. No, they don't advocate people lying. How do you put a rule in place that will stop a person from lying? To perjure yourself is already a crime, excuse me. We are not going to solve our problems this way. But, as I said, I digress. So, in cognitive behavioral therapy, properly done, and that's the key. You know, I know thousands of therapists who answer questionnaires who say correctly that when it comes to treating certain illnesses, including character disturbance, that cognitive behavioral therapy is the treatment of choice. It is. So they'll give the right answer. And if you ask them if they do this kind of therapy, they'll say certainly. But then when you look at what they actually do, many times the therapy is kind of a blend between some kind of cognitive therapy and some kind of traditional insight-oriented therapy. CBT is a very different and highly specialized therapy. And the most important component in it is what the B stands for in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's behavior that has to be targeted and corrected. That's what I said earlier. That's what the disturbed character needs, is correction, behavior correction. In other words, they need to stop doing one thing and start doing something else. And they need to be heavily reinforced for that, so that they might practice, rehearse better, more appropriate, more wholesome, more pro-social behaviors. And so the way cognitive behavioral therapy is supposed to work is clinician not only deals with the kinds of thinking patterns and attitudes that are dysfunctional, that a disturbed character often has, but they also focus on the behaviors of concern, like when they rationalize. You know, when a person rationalizes for their behavior, when they offer an excuse time and time again for something that's clearly not right, something that they know that most people would say you shouldn't do, behavior that hurts somebody else, that is unnecessarily harmful. When they make that excuse, they are resisting internalizing the value and the standard that we want them to adopt, that it's just not okay to do that certain thing. And so long as they're making an excuse, so long as they're rationalizing, so long as they're resisting internalizing the value and the standard that we want them to take in, chances are they're going to do the same behavior again, which is why that behavior needs to be confronted. And when a therapist is doing CBT with a character-impaired client, and you're sifting through the problem behaviors, maybe you've got a couple in your office, maybe the disturbed character has just really made life a living hell for their relationship partner, and the relationship partner brings up a certain behavior of concern, and then you address that behavior with the disturbed character, and then first thing out of their mouth will be some kind of rationalization or excuse. Well, she gets me so upset, or he gets me so upset, or sometimes I can't help myself, or what's a person to do, or any number of other tactics, maybe minimization, well, she's making it sound horrible. It really wasn't so bad. Or he's making it sound really terrible, and I really didn't do exactly what they say I did. Trivializing some bad behavior. Or any of the other tactics that I outline in my book, In Sheep's Clothing. When they show these behaviors, when they exhibit these behaviors, in CBT, these behaviors have to be called out and they have to be labeled. And here's the most important thing, they have to be corrected. They have to be corrected on the spot. Change, if it's ever going to happen, is going to happen in the here and now moment. Not tomorrow, not a week from now, not I'll work on it. Now. That's when change occurs, in the here and now moment. And I've heard so many horror stories from folks who tried to get some help because they were in a relationship with somebody with a character disturbance, and they went to see a counselor of some sort. And instead of getting the confrontation that they needed about the behavior that was driving them crazy, the therapist either relied on traditional old insight-oriented methods or else got bamboozled. At worst, they got bamboozled by the disturbed character, and things got no better. You might be one of those folks that had an experience like that. Maybe you want to share it with us. Maybe you just have a general comment about what I've been talking about. Maybe you want to ask a question about CBT or any of the other articles that I've gotten that I've posted on my blog at manipulativepeople.com or on counselingresource.com. At any rate, if you'd like to join the discussion, if you have a question you want to ask or an experience you want to share, or just a general observation about any of the topics we've been talking about tonight, maybe you even want to make an inquiry about America My Home, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Be happy to take your call. Well, we're in a troubled world, unfortunately, where every day bad things happen because people do bad things, but then every now and then tragedy strikes that is not of our own making. Nature kind of deals us a bad hand, and unfortunately, the folks in Nepal have experienced a pretty devastating earthquake, a 7.8 earthquake on the Richter scale, and some powerful aftershocks as well. And it looks like upwards of 2,000 people have died. They are still pulling bodies out of the rubble. And so I urge folks out there, I'm going to be doing the same myself. I know that relief agencies need our help. And I know this is going to be a massive humanitarian crisis. It is a massive humanitarian crisis. There'll be plenty of need for food, water, and lodging for folks. There'll be need for medical care. So do what you can, give what you can. I wish I could say that we didn't live in a character-impaired age. Unfortunately, we do. So unfortunately, there are some institutions where when you donate, most of your money is going for administrative costs and administrative salaries and to keep organizations fat, as opposed to getting relief to where it needs to go. I'm sorry to say that, but it is true. Nonetheless, if you look carefully enough, and I'm not going to be one here to endorse one institution over another, but if you look carefully enough and if you do your homework, there are organizations out there who are of really good integrity and who really do operate efficiently, don't overpay their execs, don't have big fat organizations that are not necessary, and actually do deliver goods and services very efficiently to the folks that need them. So I'm asking all of you out there to search your heart. We're all in this together, and we will either step up to the plate and help one another, or when the time comes and we need help, we'll all be sorry that we didn't step up to the plate. So I urge you folks to do what you can and seek those organizations that have good reputations and make a contribution, as I plan to do later this evening, And let's help the folks who, through no fault of their own, are victims of a truly great disaster. You know, it is so sad when these kinds of things happen, but they also serve as a reminder that life is tough enough and is tenuous enough and precious enough. You know, things happen that imperil us without our doing anything. Acts of nature, disasters that are not of our own making. What a shame it is that so many of the disasters that we face in our lives are of our own making and our own choosing. That's the real disaster. Life is tough enough. There's nothing guaranteed. Life is tough enough, and every now and then, natural catastrophes happen. And that's when people of good character really step up. That's when people of sound conscience and decent character rise to the occasion and pitch in there and help make it all work. But unfortunately, there are so many problems that we face today that are of our own making, and we can do something about it. We can do something about it. In the coming weeks, I'm going to have more information about a webinar that I'll be having in the fall that you're all welcome to join. I'll have more information on price, on registration, when it will open, early registration discounts. I'll have all that information within the next few weeks on my blog at manipulative-people.com, which I urge you to visit. I'll also be posting some information about it on the other blog that I write for at counselingresource.com, and also on my website at drgeorgesimon.com. That's drgeorge.com. So stay tuned for more information about that. I also plan a couple of in-person workshops for later this year. And I'll have more information appearing on the blog about that and on my website as well. And once again, as I've mentioned earlier, as we roll into the season, you know, Memorial Day is not too far away now. As we roll into the season for Memorial Day, Flag Day, 4th of July, where we get into the patriotic spirit and where we have all these patriotic events, it's the time for folks to begin to request the music and the accompaniment tracks for America, My Home. I would truly love it if you would be one of the ones carrying the message out there that will preserve our freedoms and will restore our country's greatness when each and every one of us makes it a personal mission, takes it personally, and makes a personal commitment to live up to our best ideals, to honor all the principles that made us truly great. And those principles are relatively simple and straightforward. If we're decent folks, if we have integrity of character, if we care for our families, if we're not frivolous about our relationships, but take seriously the building block of society, which is our family, and we nurture our children, and we teach them right from wrong, and we instill in them values, and we model those values ourselves, and we model integrity ourselves, if we do all that, and we develop ourselves, we develop our talents, we make sure that we educate ourselves, that we stay in class, that we learn what we're supposed to learn, that we take it seriously, that we plan on making a contribution, that we don't just plan on finding what kind of job we can get where we can rip off the company to the greatest extent possible, do the minimum amount of work and make the maximum amount of salary and bonus and pension, and get the maximum amount of benefits, but rather truly invest ourselves in making a difference for ourselves and our communities, develop ourselves with a thought as to what we can contribute rather than what we can take. And when we show our appreciation for this great and wonderful freedom that we enjoy, then we do something together that we have done at various points in our history, and that would serve us certainly well to do again. We build a great society. You know, Lyndon Johnson said he was going to build a great society, and he was going to do it with a series of entitlements. Well, we've got the entitlements, and what do we have? We don't have that great society. The great society starts with us. It starts with us and our commitment. And it extends to our families first, to our children, then to our communities, into everything we do, into the jobs we do, into the other social undertakings that we take. We bring our character to the table. Everything else falls into place. So our first responsibility is to develop us. That's our first responsibility. Parents, you can't groom your children unless you know how to lead. You have to have a solid rooting in the values and principles that would prosper you in order to instill those values and principles in your children. So as we approach this time period, I urge you folks to listen to my attempt to really inspire folks about the personal duty that we have to preserve our country's greatness and to preserve our freedoms. So go to my website at drgeorgesimon.com. Go to my blog at manipulative-people.com. Go to YouTube, to my YouTube channel at Dr. George K. Simon, or Dr. George Simon, either one. You'll find my videos for America My Home, or Google Patriotic Songs America, or Great Patriotic Songs, or New Patriotic Songs, or America My Home, or Anthem for the Millennium, and take a listen, be inspired, and hopefully I'll get a request from you, and hopefully you can join the chorus of individuals helping to carry the message out there. And as you listen to the bumper as we close tonight, remember the connection, folks. It all hinges on character. That's what preserves our freedom. That's what makes us great. And keep it in mind. And tune in again next week when we'll have more discussion on character matters. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. George Simon. Good night.